Quick warning, today's subject matter may be considered sensitive by some viewers, and viewer discretion is advised. And if you have a story you want to send my way, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to submit your story. And of course, thank you. I know this experience isn't the craziest, but it was very uncomfortable and scary at points, so enjoy. I'm quite an awkward person, and I could struggle to make friends due to my shyness, so in late 2019 to early 2020, I decided to join my 6th form's D&D club. I was hooked, and the fact that I had met a very lovely girl there, who I'll refer to as May, made it all the more enjoyable. It was the type of new friendship where all you want to do is spend time with your new bestie. And so when May asked me to join their D&D party, I was overjoyed. I really did like her. She started off a little awkward, as was I, but she was really sweet and understanding, and we ended up having a lot more of our nerdy interests in common. The first time we hung out was a lot more uncomfortable than I was expecting. Of course, as we had only been friends for a couple of weeks, so I knew it would be a little awkward. But I was not expecting how terribly unpleasant it turned out to be. We didn't seem to click for some reason. Everything was fine when we were in a group, but one-on-one, May was strange. She would completely ignore me for no reason, all of a sudden, make very odd jokes, but in a serious manner, leaving the pause a little too long, and would then laugh, as well as other strange mannerisms. This was just before I left 6th form early due to personal reasons. It wasn't super off-putting. I wanted to get closer to her, believing once she got used to me, maybe she would mellow out a bit. Boy, I was so wrong. Once I did officially leave school, May became intense. It started out with her asking to meet up every other day, keeping in mind that I had started working full-time by this point and had very little time to see people. Which was fine, because she would understand that I was busy, right? Wrong. She started getting annoyed and upset to an inappropriate level. For example, she would make me send a picture of my calendar to prove I was too busy to see her. And even when she could see it was chock-a-block, she would start to try and manipulate me and make me feel bad for not being able to see her. Messaging me things like, "I love you, but you're so difficult to meet up with." Calling me her best friend, and telling me she was crying because she couldn't see me. These conversations would happen around 2 to 3 times a week, and honestly, I started getting creeped out. By this point, we had only known each other for around 2 to 3 months. We'd met up alone around 5 to 6 times, and had seen each other almost every day at school before my departure. My creepometer had started to rise, but it wasn't at a point where I wanted to end the friendship. Sure, it was annoying how possessive she was, but it's not like she was stalking me. Yet. I distanced myself from her a little, just for my own sanity, as her neediness has progressively gotten more intense, and it had become taxing on my mental health. But I still wanted to be friends with her. Underneath everything, May really was lovely. But that was until they came to my house for the first time, back when I was living with my parents. May turned up a lot later than we had agreed, which peeved me a little as they knew I had work the next day. But it wasn't a biggie, and that's when the really uncomfortable comments started. Now, my parents' house is very nice. It's big. They have a gym and a hot tub, a lovely garden, etc. By this point, I was used to friends making a couple of comments like, "Wow, your house is so nice," or "Damn, I love your house." My favorite was probably when my cousin compared the house's size to a horse's. Yeah. Now that's funny, but May wouldn't stop. She would drop how large or nice she thought my house was in every other sentence, which later developed to her slating the house and my parents' job constantly, telling me that I was shoving my parents' wealth in her face, or that my parents get their money because they take advantage of vulnerable children. Please keep in mind that I hadn't spoken about my parents' money or the family home once in this conversation, because talking about private things like that is very uncomfortable for me. Then she started to get even stranger, asking me to cuddle and spoon, and telling me that I couldn't escape, going on about how I was really happy with my boyfriend, and then making jokes that didn't really feel like jokes at my expense. I was very uneasy, and my parents could see it too. So, after that day, I told May that I was way too busy to meet up, so to stop asking me. She didn't. She started making jokes that because I wouldn't see her, she would just show up at my house and catch me off guard. She even changed her jog route so that she would run past my parents' house every day. And then she started messaging my boyfriend. It was completely out of the blue. I hadn't even given her his social media or name. I hadn't even really discussed my relationship with her at all. It was very uncomfortable for everyone involved, and my boyfriend was obviously not interested in being her friend, due to how uncomfortable she made me. She told him things like, "You need my permission to date OP because I'm her best friend. And you have to be friends with me and like me because I'm OP's best friend." We were not best friends. She would spam my phone with messages, and I would reply around twice a month. I was completely smothered. It was so strange, but when I received a screenshot of their conversation from my boyfriend because he was creeped out, I was livid. The screenshot showed them having a very one-sided conversation on her behalf, where all of a sudden, she told him that she loved him. I didn't know what to say, and neither did he, so I confronted her. May tried to turn it around on me and said, and I quote, "I was talking to your boyfriend, lol, and he knew about me. Impossible. I figured out you talked about me without my consent, and I'm heartbroken." It was surreal. I told her that I had mentioned that we met up and that she was a friend from school, which was true. Of course, I had told him that she made me uncomfortable, but she didn't know that, and the conversation ended there. Then she went to uni, and we didn't speak for a while. It was so relaxing. All the anxiety around the situation faded. May had made new friends, and I was free. But when she came home for Christmas, everything started up again, and all that anxiety came back. I was going through a really tough time, so me and my mom went away for a few days. But when I didn't respond to May for 3 days because I was busy, she went crazy. She spammed me on every social media platform I have daily: Instagram, Snapchat, Discord, text messages, and more. The messages started off normally with her asking if we could meet up, and that she was home from uni, but they gradually became angry. And I won't lie, it was scary. I believed her when she said she would just show up at my house, and I was terrified that she would ask my friends for my new address under the pretense that I had forgotten to give it to her, as they had threatened to do this in a joking form before. It felt obsessive, and I didn't know what to do. She wouldn't stop messaging me, and it became a constant stream of creepy messages. So I exploded at her. I told her that this behavior was creepy, that I've never been made to feel this uncomfortable by someone, that she didn't have boundaries, and I was scared about the joke-disguised threats that she had made. I ended it off with the fact that I didn't want to see her again, and could she please stop messaging me? I could have definitely been nicer about it, but that never seemed to work in our prior conversations when I had to defend why I was busy and couldn't see her. Her response was so strange. She became incredibly apologetic, and then she got angry. Then started to try and manipulate me into meeting up, apologizing, putting herself down, and then telling me that she loved me. I was so over all of her nonsense and weird behavior. I felt bad for her. I had wanted to be her friend so much, but she was obsessive and overbearing. And even though I tried so long to make it work, but she'd ended up pushing me away because of her behavior. I do wish her well, and I hope she gets help for whatever's going on with her, but creepy stalker friend, you are definitely not my cup of tea. Please, stay the heck away from me. When I was about 15 or 16, I was a real party animal. Always in the next town over at my friend's place. Most of the time, I was able to stay at their place overnight and head home the next day. But there were a few occasions where I found myself walking home. This walk was roughly 2 to 3 hours. If it was a nice night, I didn't mind it at all. It gave me a chance to sober up before I got home. No, my parents did not know that I was doing this. It was just me being a stupid teenager. At the time, there was a good 40-minute stretch that was pitch black with nothing but fields and forest on either side of the road. It's been since developed into a shopping center and homes. Every now and then, a car would pull over asking if I needed a ride home. Most times I would say no, thank you, and go on my way without issue. 2 times, cabs offered me rides home for a discounted price, and they were both amazing people. They told me about their wives and kids and how I should really be careful walking alone at night. They would drop me off at my house and make sure that I got in before driving away. One night, walking home on that stretch of road, minding my own business, a car pulled over in front of me. Not a big deal, this had happened before. As I was about to walk past the passenger side, the window rolled down. A guy in his mid-30s asked if I was all right. He was very clean, handsome, and his car looked brand new. He had a smile on his face and a weirdly friendly tone. Every hair on my body stood up. This seemingly normal guy was giving me one of the worst gut feelings I had ever gotten in my whole life. I backed up from the car as he spoke to me. Being polite, I told him I was all right and not too far away from home, but I thanked him for his concern. The smile never left his face, but it was wrong, like it was being forced. He insisted that he could drive me home and then said, "There are some crazy people in this world." By this point, my body was screaming that I needed to get away from this person. I faked a smile, thanking him, again saying goodbye and goodnight. I started walking away, pulling out my phone, and I pretended to call a friend. He sat in that spot for a while before slowly creeping up beside me again, still giving me that weird smile. "Are you sure I can't drive you home?" I lied, saying that I was just talking to my friend and that he was on his way, keeping my distance from the car. "You can wait in the car with me," he said with a bit of an odd tone in his voice. Yet again, I declined his offer. My skin was crawling, and I'm sure you could hear the nerves in my voice. I continued with my fake phone call loudly, saying, "Oh, you're a few minutes away? Great, you'll see me." The driver's face went completely blank. His smile was gone, not a single emotion in sight. He just looked forward and rolled up his window and started driving away. I waited until he was out of sight before running as far away from that road as I could. I made it home safe that night, although the rest of the walk, I was completely on edge. I was constantly looking over my shoulder and holding my phone up to my ear like I was talking to someone. Obviously, I can't ever really know what his intentions were, but if my gut was anything to go off of, I truly feel like if I got in that car, I would have never gone home again. Trust your gut and stay safe out there. And please, don't get into the car with strangers. I came home from work today to receive some very unsettling news from one of my roommates. It started when I went to let the dogs out into the backyard. Our back door is in the kitchen, so on my way to let them out, I passed by the oven, and I noticed that it was on. It surprised me a bit because my roommate, Mandy, was the only other person home, and she had been spending most of her time back in her room due to feeling ill. Even so, I figured that I'd better ask her before turning it off, on the off chance that she was actually using the oven. I went to the end of the hallway where her room was, knocked on her door, and asked, "Hey, is the oven supposed to be on? Like, are you using it right now?" Confusion and concern was immediately apparent in her voice as she replied, "What? No? I haven't even been out in the kitchen today." I shared her confusion and concern upon hearing this, but then pondered the possibility that Carl, her brother and our other roommate, had been the one to leave it on by mistake. I asked her if this could be the case, and she told me that Carl was still at work and had been since early that morning. This was when she and I began to piece together that something very strange had to have happened. I told her that I had just gotten home a few minutes prior. It was a little after 3 p.m. at that point, and I had left the house at about 7:30 that morning. She then informed me, with horrific realization, that at around 11 a.m. she had heard noises coming from the living room, including a woman's voice, a chair moving, and the front door opening. She didn't realize at the time that I was at work, so she just assumed it was me and didn't think much of it. She then mentioned that, in hindsight though, the dogs were barking an unusual amount during this time. I asked her how long the noises coming from the living room went on, and she said that it was hard to tell because she was trying to sleep at the time, but that if she had to guess, they lasted about 20 minutes. Mandy, Carl, and I are the only current residents of this home. And as mentioned before, Carl and I were both at work during that time frame, so Mandy was the only person who reasonably should have been in the house. I thanked her for informing me of this, and then went back to the front half of the house and did a quick comb of the area to check for anything else that looked out of place or missing. I didn't discover anything else out of the ordinary, and as of the time of this posting, nothing else has come of it. Update. Pretty minor, but still pretty weird. I went to the hall closet to get more toilet paper for my bathroom, and I noticed an empty wrapper/packaging for a new pillow in there. I didn't buy a new pillow recently. I asked both of my roommates if they did, and Mandy said that she bought a new pillow about a month ago, but that she threw the packaging away. This is my first time noticing the packaging in that hall closet, and I last went into the hall closet only a couple of weeks ago, if I remember correctly. I'll continue to post updates if I notice anything else weird, and if anything major happens in this situation, I'll make a whole new post to update everyone. Thank you so much to everyone for all the concern, support, and advice that you've been offering. I've been debating sharing this due to the fact that my memory is very fuzzy about the whole story, and this is my first time posting. When I was about 7 or 8, I'm 25 now, I was at my aunt's house for a family gathering. There was a lot of people inside. My mom is the youngest of 8 kids, so I have a very large family. So I decided to go sit out on the front porch. My aunt lives in town and 4 blocks away from the lake. I was sitting by myself on the railing of her porch like most of us kids did when we hung out there. I had headphones in my ears listening to music when I saw a man walking down the sidewalk towards me. I wasn't alarmed or anything, since I practically grew up in the neighborhood, and since a family gathering was going on in the house, I felt pretty comfortable to be by myself. I figured he was just on a walk like anyone else and would just walk on by. I was wrong. He stopped about 6 feet away from me and said hello. I took my headphones out and awkwardly said hi back. Mind you, I'm about a 7 to 8-year-old small petite girl. He was being all friendly and said that he lives around the corner. I've never seen this man before and knew my aunt's neighbors on the block. And then he was asking if I could tell him where Adams Street is. I gave him a real funny look and said, it's right there, and pointed to it. My aunt lived 3 houses away from it, so it was a really stupid question to ask, since it was right there. And it was the street around the corner, so I felt instant red flags. I ended up getting off the railing and was slowly making my way to my aunt's front door as this man was coming closer to me. He then said, "Can you show me where it is?" Every episode of Disappeared that my mom would always watch was running through my head. I felt sick. I responded with, "My mom will be back any second, and she can show you." He said, "No, I want you to show me." And by this time, he was 1 step off from coming up the porch with his hand out. By the grace of God, my mom pulled in the driveway at that very moment. I didn't know when she would be back because she had run to the store to grab a few things for my aunt. She immediately knew something was wrong because she didn't know the man. I yelled to her, "Hey Mom, this man needs help finding Adams Street." As she was about to get out of the car, she had the window down. She gave me a funny look and said, "What?" And the man said, "Never mind," and then took off down the road. I never had an incident like that ever again, and that was the first time. I thank God for my mom pulling into the driveway when she did, because if she hadn't, I don't know what would have happened. On Tuesday, the 22nd of February 2022, I had a person come into my job. I work in women's clothing, and it was a customer that I'd helped on 3 occasions over the last 8 months. They said they were a man with he/him pronouns, but his girlfriend liked it when he dressed up in women's clothing. I didn't find anything wrong with this because I enjoy helping people feel good about themselves. I asked if this was consensual, and he said yes, that he enjoyed it too. On this particular day, he came in, this time with the wig and dress on, which again, I found no issue with. In fact, I felt proud of him. He asked for the fitting room once no one was in the store, and he asked for my opinion on something he was wearing. I agreed. He opened the fitting room door and was standing there with a blouse on, and no pants, but was wearing a pink and white polka-dotted diaper. I was shaken and a bit uncomfortable, but I maintained my composure and said the top was cute and then turned away. He tried on another outfit and was fully clothed this time and asked if we had anything shorter because his girlfriend likes it when he gets a pedicure and the lady doing his toes can see his diaper. I grew more and more uncomfortable, but being alone, I didn't say anything other than, "Oh, that's interesting." He asked if we had any long shirts that could be used as a dress, and I said yes and went to fetch them. I came back, and one by one, he came out in the tops with his diapers showing, and even told me a story about him peeing himself at a sex store, and his girlfriend then changing his diaper in front of the employees, who were turned on by this. The discomfort grew and grew until I was shaking and texting my coworker to come in early. He comes out of the fitting room in the dress he came in with, and turned away and then acted like he was on the phone. But I noticed he was on the calculator instead. I stood there trying to calm down and everything, and when he comes back and says that his girlfriend gave him the task of taking a photo with me in his bra and diaper, I declined, and I said I was not okay with that. He said that it was okay, but that he was going to get a spanking from her later. He left shortly after, thanking me for my help, but not purchasing anything, which was a first. I brushed the experience off as a weird occurrence, and then went on about my day, thinking that I wouldn't see him for a few more months again. I went home later that day, and my coworker texted me, saying he was back and doing the same thing to her, but that he left again without making a purchase. The next day, I asked my coworker to come in early so I wasn't alone, and she did. He came in again, and I went to the back because I was about to have a panic attack. I felt sexually harassed simply just looking at him and picturing the look he had when he was staring at me in the diaper. I overheard him asking my coworker for my name and when I would be working again. She didn't give him either, and he left making a purchase on a blouse that he had tried on the day before. My coworker told me that he said he identifies as she, which threw me off since it contradicted what he had told me the day before. At this point, I filed a report with the police. I genuinely think this is a ploy to traffic me. An officer came and talked to me, and I told him everything. The next day, I was off work, and I get a call from my coworker saying that he drove by looking into the store, and when my coworker caught him staring, he drove away. I went to the police station since I had to drop off my statement, and I informed them on what happened. The next day, I opened the store and had to go by the bank. When I was driving by the bank, I noticed his truck outside an auto parts store, and I called the investigator and told him this, and he got a tag number. I noticed he had a sticker for a local campsite that expires Monday. It's February. Who the hell is camping in February by a lake? All in all, I feel good knowing more about him than he knows about me. I know his name, where he works, and that he's got a campsite until Monday. I didn't see him yesterday or today, and I'm hoping he got the message that he scared the hell out of me. I will keep you updated as this goes on. Edit, for some context. I'm 25 and female, and I'm 5'2". The person discussed in this post is about 6'5", 350 pounds, in his late 30s or mid-40s. Hopefully this will help shed some light on why I was worried to call this person out on their crap while I was alone. Thank you to everyone who's given advice this far. I do appreciate it more than you all know. Update. He came in today while I was working and the cops were called. He's been banned from the store, and if he comes back, he will be arrested. If anything else happens, I'll be sure to post it here. Thank you for reading and giving the words of encouragement. I appreciate it more than you could ever understand. I'm proud to have stood my ground today for my store and my employees. No one should ever have to go to work and be in fear for the sake of customer service. And screw any creep who utilizes customer service as a way to sexually harass people who just want to put food on the table. And again, I thank each of you so very much. In the summer of 2019, my partner and I, both early 20s, decided to take a road trip to Vancouver, Canada, and then stay at the Golden Ears Provincial Park. We liked camping, had spring break, and we wanted to do something different and make the most out of our vacation. My partner had never been out of the US, and it seemed like a crazy new experience. It was a 6-day trip with Airbnbs in each state, and the grand finale was a reserved campsite at Golden Ears, and it was close to the water, at Alouette Lake. We packed terribly, had a giant tent, it brought a bunch of fruit and veggies to eat healthily, stored them in a cooler that was too small, and brought a cutting board and a knife to break up the snacks while driving. We started in California, driving in our bright red Ford Fiesta. We drove through Oregon and Washington, and we made it up to Vancouver. We spent a day or two in each state, drank a little too much, and stayed out late. Canada was the best part, and Alouette Lake felt like walking in a painting. We walked barefoot on the rocks with our toes in the freezing cold lake. We hiked around, saw a beautiful waterfall where we saw a couple taking pics of each other for over an hour, and we started modeling the same poses from far away. Everything was perfect, and the campsite was empty except for the other couple. We went to bed early that night. It was quiet, and I woke up to crackling outside the tent. My partner was still asleep and snoring. I didn't think much of it because it was pitch black and probably an animal. The crackling continued closer to the tent. I sat up and grabbed my phone, and the brightness came on and I turned it off, almost blinding myself with light. In those 2 seconds, I could make out a person right outside of our tent. I froze and sat up. They weren't moving and were close enough to unzip the tent. I started poking my partner because I had no idea what to do. They woke up, and I said, "There's someone outside the tent." Then I heard footsteps. Quiet footsteps, walking out of our campsite. And my partner starts loudly saying, "What?" repeatedly in a sleepy haze. A car or truck is parked right outside of our camping area, and no one is near our campsite. It starts up, and then drives off. They didn't turn their lights on until they turned the corner and we were out of view, so I couldn't make out much, but it looked like a truck. Now I'm shaking, and my partner can't put together what's happening. I want to leave, but Golden Ears locks the gate until 6 or 7 a.m., and it's 1 a.m., so we're going to be here. I make us move to the Ford Fiesta and sleep in the tightly packed car. She falls asleep immediately and thinks that I'm paranoid. Could it have been a park ranger? It seemed too weird of behavior for a park ranger. So I sit there wide awake for about 2 hours. The car's locked, and I want to sleep, but can't. I'm in the passenger seat, my partner's in the driver's seat asleep, and it's 3 a.m. I'm sitting half awake, and I hear a car slowly driving up the road with their lights off as it rounds the corner. It had to be the same truck. and I was scared, but my adrenaline was pumping. It slowly rounds the corner and pulls up directly in front of our campsite again, in the same spot. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I had no weapon but the kitchen knife that we brought for the fruit and veggies, so I grabbed the knife and tried to make myself look angry, crazy, and big. I sit straight up in the passenger seat holding the kitchen knife. I keep it straight up at eye level and stare deadpan out at this truck in the pitch black, just like the father from the American Gothic painting. The truck stops and turns off. A light shines directly in my face coming from inside the truck, and I stare back terrified. In my bright red Ford Fiesta, holding my large kitchen knife, not blinking, the truck starts up and turns on its lights, and they stay on, blinding me. Then the truck pulls out and turns around and goes back where it came. My heart is pounding, and I wake up my partner and say that we need to get the hell out of there. We pack by just throwing things into our car and sit there awake until 6 a.m. We drive home and we don't stop. We keep rehashing it and trying to make sense of the situation, and we ultimately decide that we both needed some sleep. There was this time when my cousins, grandma, my siblings, my mom, and I went to the zoo. We were expecting a great day ahead with no worries, just spending the day together. But then, after a while of walking and looking around, my grandma wanted to rest. So she sat on a bench nearby. Beside her were a group of men in their late 20s. The rest of us just walked around the place, talking to each other, but I also noticed that the group of those guys were looking at us in a very lustful way. My cousins, siblings, and I were all under 14, and I was the oldest. And this made me very uncomfortable because I had to take responsibility of anything that happens to us. My grandma and mum were in a deep conversation through the whole day, that they didn't notice the fact that these men started following us after we decided to continue our walk. About a minute or so later, we stopped to look at a certain animal. I don't clearly remember which, as all I was focused on was the catcalling that we heard behind us. Then, one of my cousins, who was the second oldest of us, whispered to me that the group of men were staring daggers at our back. I was freaking out so much, and she just laughed it off. I was too scared to even tell my mom about it because I thought she might scold me. I don't know what for, I was 14 at the time, so I just kept quiet throughout. So later, I decided to take the lead, walk right in front so that my grandma and mum, who were walking super slow, while immersed in their conversation, would be the ones between me and those creeps. I tried taking different turns as there were so many paths, and I just wanted them to get lost in the crowd and stop following us. So, many turns later, I met a dead end with only one door displaying the exit sign. So I had to turn back anyway. And when I did, the creeps were standing like a few feet away from us, staring at us with smirks. And no one else was in that path as it was leading to the exit. So it was just us and those men here. As for my grandma and my mom, they still hadn't noticed anything yet. So I boldly turned around and walked past those creeps without making eye contact, and didn't stop until I've scampered very far from there. My cousins and siblings had to jog to keep up. My mom and grandma were really slow as always. But all I ever had in my mind back then was to get rid of these guys. We ran deep into the crowd, even crossed a bridge to get to the other side of the river, just to make these guys stop following us. And when I turned around to look, they were still following us, with sinister smiles on their faces. I remember wanting to cry so badly, but I held my tears back. I noticed them suddenly stop at the foot of the bridge on the other side, and that's when they eventually stopped following us. It was then a huge wave of relief hit me and we continued our strolling at ease. It's been 4 years and this still haunts me. My cousins and I still talk about this from time to time, but the rest of my cousins and siblings don't know anything about this to this day. This happened in 2002. I was living in a ground floor apartment in the corner of an L-shaped building, with the living room, kitchen, and parents' bedroom on the garden or balcony side, and my sister's bedroom and bathroom on the parking side. I was 7 years old at the time of the facts, and all this happened over several weeks. Maybe months, but I hope not. At the beginning of summer 2002, I was often playing in the common gardens of the building with the other children, when one afternoon my mother called me and my friends to ask us if it was us who, to play, would have taken one of her panties that was drying on the floor of our terrace, and that it was not proper to play with women's underwear. But it wasn't us. As the weeks went by, several similar cases were reported to us, but always without explanation. Sometime after these events, my father, not being able to sleep one evening, decided to smoke a cigarette at the kitchen window, which is on the garden side, and decided to look around to clear his mind. As he looked closer at our right neighbor's terrace, my father saw a man standing there and not moving, and looking into their apartment. My father thought it was the neighbor and said, "Hey, what are you doing, bud?" The person turned around and looked at my father. That man was touching himself. Then, without saying anything, the intruder ran through the hedge and left through the common gardens. The whole neighborhood was informed, and it was decided that this could not last any longer. We children were forbidden to play outside in the evenings, and a feeling of fear settled in among the people of the ground floor. During that year, a new neighbor had moved in alone in the apartment, with a garden view above ours. Alerted and a little shocked by the incessant theft of women's underwear in my own building, my neighbor legally, with good reason for her part, bought a dissuasion gun, which shoots and weighs like a real gun, but shoots blanks, and she kept it in her bedside table. This neighbor loved animals, and had 2 parakeets, which often made noise, in a birdcage on her balcony, had cats, fish, etc. One evening, this neighbor came back from work, and she put her things down and went about her life normally like any other person coming home from work. But that evening, she saw on her balcony that, unfortunately, the birdcage had ended up open and her parakeets had disappeared. Thinking it was her own mistake, she was sad, but there was no reason to be scared. After getting through her evening, she went to bed and fell asleep. But something woke her up in the middle of the night. At first, she felt her comforter pull slightly. Thinking it was the cat, she held the comforter tightly, but it still pulled. Then she felt the bed move and a breath behind her. There was someone with her in her bed. The feeling of fear took hold of her. She jumped out of bed while opening her bedside table and took out her pistol and fired twice in the direction of the man, who fled by jumping out the bedroom window, which was open. The whole building was awakened by these shots, including my father, who saw a man land in front of our terrace and ran into the gardens. He grabbed what he could and he chased him. The police stopped my father, who was running in his underwear with a golf putter in the common gardens. Of course, he was proved to be the neighbor afterwards. A couple of minutes later, the police informed us of the arrest of a man in the housing estate next to us by a patrol who was watching our neighborhood after his thefts of underwear. We were surprised when we learned that the pervert was a man of 45 years, married, a father of 3 children, and in recidivism of several acts of voyeurism and break-ins. He had even entered a lady's house by climbing up the balconies while she was living on the 4th floor. Later, we learned that there was no charges to have been filed against him because, 1, he didn't technically break into my neighbor's house, 2, he didn't assault, rape, or even touch my neighbor, and they're not even sure that the thefts are necessarily attributed to him. So, here we are, living in a country where a person with serious voyeuristic urges that leads to more other serious things can't be supervised by prison or hospital staff because he technically didn't do anything. So this was a collection of creepy encounter and stalker stories. A huge thank you to everyone who lets me use their stories, honestly. Greatly appreciated. You don't even know how much I appreciate that. You really don't. No one does, honestly. Every time I get a yes, it really does mean a lot to me, because I get to move the story from my requested tab over to my episode tab, and it just makes me happy. I get to watch the episodes build themselves as it keeps going. Anyways, huge thank you to everyone who lets me use their stories, like I said, or submits their stories. That really means a lot to me, too. And, of course, as always, these stories should be listened to as entertainment, but also a cautionary tale. Whereas cautionary tales, there's more than just the one story. Be careful of the world out there. It's a crazy place. I'm not saying don't trust anyone, but be careful who you trust. And trust people according to how well you know them. Even then, sometimes you know someone really well and they're weird. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, hit that thumbs up button, and if you didn't, well, I'm sorry to hear that. You can also leave me a comment letting me know which story was your personal favorite or which one you preferred the most. Or if you have any similar situations you'd like to comment out, feel free to do that as well. Alternatively, you can subscribe to the channel if you're new. That's not really an alternative to commenting. Don't know why I said alternatively. Anyways, subscribe to the channel if you're new, or don't subscribe if you're not new, because it'll unsubscribe. You don't want that, I'm thinking. At least I hope you don't. And if you want to go further with supporting, Patreon or join down below, where for $1 a month you can get early access to my content. Yeah. Anyways, all that said, friends, I hope you have a beautiful day. I hope you're doing well, and I hope the day is seeing you moderately stress-free. I won't say stress-free because it's a weekday, and I know how those go. But hopefully you're moderately stress-free. You're able to take a deep breath, appreciate the day, and move forward with your best foot forward. Do your best to push on and keep going. Remember that you are loved. You are important. You are valid. And you are the best you that you could ever be. Never let anyone else tell you otherwise. And until we meet again, my friends, sleep well.